All right, cool. So this is round 5. And we're on the play. Do we keep this hands? I think we do. Just draw lands, we win, right? We like 2 lands we just can't lose. Seems reasonable. Enemy mulligans to 6, enemy mulligans to 5. If you're not, so if you're wondering why we keep this hand, enemy is the all spells deck. If you're not familiar with the all spells deck, ooze plus 2 open mana is game over. Yes, in round 5, I'm against oops all spells. I'm on the play. I have 2 scavenging ooze in my deck. The way their deck is constructed, about I think either 30 or 40% of the time, a green scavenging ooze and 1 green mana is game over. And if scavenging ooze and 2 mana open is actual game over. Where they have to hologram mauling their scavenging ooze. But I have a spell guide for that. So I keep this hand because I'm on the play. I have turn 2 ooze. And the modern version of this deck almost is like really consistent turn 3 wins. Really consistent. They can win turn 1, they can win turn 2. But they're really consistent at turn 3 deck. So I'm like, give me a forest, 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 give me a forest. It's game over, right? Forest, 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 forest. Fudge. Sword of the Meek. Looks like they don't have a 3rd land. All right, we have a shot. Forest. Bam! Let's go. Now the enemy has to Hagra Mauling, which is a 2 black instant. Destroy target creature. They have to cast that card in order to on my ooze in order to win the game. They cannot win if I have 2 green mana open. So I consistently don't play spells because I didn't play Spellskite last turn. I didn't play anything this turn. My goal, leave open 2 green mana the whole game. The sword is part of their combo. That's how they win. They get back Narcomoeba, which gets back the swords, which gets back Salvage Titan. So this is their deck, if you're not familiar. This is the All Spells deck. They have 2 Narcomoebas. So they have 2 Narcomoebas. So what they do is they cast Balustrade Spy or Undercity Informer. They use it, Undercity Informer if they did it. They mill their deck. They get Narcomoeba into play from their deck, which gets back all of the swords of the Meek. They then sacrifice the 3 swords of the Meek to cast Salvage Titan from the graveyard. That is your second creature you've cast in a turn. All 4 of the Vengevines come back and attack. That's 16. In addition to that, there's 4 Creeping Chills that get burned for 12. So this deck can win on turn 1. It does 28 damage on turn 1. Right? And they can't be stuck with these cards in hand because they have Phantasmagorian. Right? So the only way they can be stuck is if they actually drew Phantasmagorian and they actually drew Salvage Titan. Is the only way they can get stuck. They have to specifically draw those 2 cards, but when they mulligan, they can put those cards on the bottom if they have them. So they would have to have drawn them for their draw steps, exactly those 2 cards, in order to get owned. Not Salvage Titan? No, they have to draw both Phantasmagorian and Salvage Titan to get owned. Because if either one of them is in their hand, it's fine. Have I read Salvage Titan? Oh, the Salvage Titan, you can like sacrifice 3 artifacts to cast it. Is that what it is? Yeah, you're right. You can just play it from the graveyard. Is that what's going on? It's sack 3 to cast it. Does the ability just say you may sacrifice 3 artifacts rather than pay spells mana cost? Exile 3 cards from your graveyard. Return Salvage Titan from your graveyard to your hand. Right. No, you're right. I'm sorry. They return Salvage Titan to their hand and then they play it. You're right. I'm sorry. My apologies. I thought it was just you may use this ability from your graveyard. You have to return to your hand and do it. Yeah, I get it. Right. If they draw both Narcomoeba, it is a problem. Yes. Drawing both Narcomoeba is a problem that they would have to have. They need to cast artifacts to get out of it. That's the fail condition. I knew they had a fail condition. My apologies. That was the wrong fail condition. The actual fail condition is they draw both Narcomoebas, right? They draw with both Narcomoebas, and if the only way to win if they draw both Narcomoebas is that they have to play 3 artifacts, which they only have 11 in the deck, right? So, and if they draw 1 Narcomoeba, what? Now what are you complaining about? But the joke is that they mulligan and they can just put an Narcomoeba on the bottom if they draw it, right? So the odds of them drawing it are kind of low. Yeah, they can hardcast Narcomoebas if they have enough mana. That is correct. They can't win very early. You are correct that they would need 5 or 6 mana to do so. Yes. Depending on the situation, or they can just like hardcast Undercity Informer and then a next turn do it. They have, obviously, there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of moving pieces, but they do have fail conditions. They do exist. It doesn't fail a lot. That is correct. It doesn't fail a lot, but it can happen. I do know that Scavenging Ooze plus 1 or 2 mana, like 1 mana will beat them a percentage of the time. It's like I said, if they draw one of the Narcomoebas, you can just exile the other one. And then the swords don't come into play and they don't get to do their thing. So, we're not playing anything. We're leaving open Scavenging Ooze. Now we can cast Collect. We can now leave open 2 mana. Because enemy cannot win at instant speed, we can just Collect a Company. Enemy had to pay a lot of life to put their lands into play untapped, so they're actually really low. And they can tell that I have a Collect a Company because I didn't play anything. They Creeping Chill me to gain 3 life. EOT, Collected Company. Second Ooze, Ranger Captain of Eos, Arbor Elf. Looking at my hand, I have Heliod and Spike Feeder, right? So we might as well, we can get Arbor Elf to produce as much mana as we need. And we can get Ranger Captain for Walking Ballista, so let's go. So this is one of the backdoor combos of the deck. Normally you would need 9 mana to win, right? Normally you need 9 mana to win because it's 3 for Heliod and 4 for Ballista. So that's 7, and then you need to give Ballista lifelink. Right? So that's 9 mana. If Heliod's already in play, it costs you 6 mana. If you have any of your 2-drops in play, it's only 4 mana. Because you can play your Ballista, it gets bigger from either Auriok Champion or Conclave Mentor for 2, and then you can pay 2 to give it lifelink, and it's a 2/2, and you can remove a counter to deal damage, and then put the counter back on, right? So just playing the combo takes 9. If you just have those Ballista Heliod. If Heliod's already in play, it only takes 6 mana. If you have a combo piece in play, it only takes 4 mana. And the alternative, there's 2 other alternatives. The other alternative is you have Pendelhaven. That's why it's in the deck. So if you have a Pendelhaven, it only takes 4 lands in Pendelhaven. So it takes 5 mana if you have a Pendelhaven. Because what you can do is you can play Ballista for 1, give it lifelink, use Pendelhaven to make it a 2/3, remove a counter to deal 1 damage, and then it's a 0/0, but it's +1/+2 from the Pendelhaven because you already used it. And so that's why the Pendelhaven is in the deck, because it's a land that produces 2 mana for the combo. It also protects your Arbor Elves from Red and 6. So that's why you play it over Forest. Even though you have Arbor Elf and Utopia Sprawl to require Forest, what Pendelhaven does for the deck is worth it. And the last way to make the mana, the combo to cost less is if you have a Scavenging Ooze in play. Because Scavenging Ooze gains 1 life, it costs 1 mana, so it's like a Pendelhaven. Because you can play Ballista for 1, you can give it Lifelink for 2, so that's 4 mana, and then with your 5th mana, you can use Scavenging Ooze to remove a creature, and then put a counter on your Ballista. The problem is, there's no creatures in the graveyard, right? But we can solve that problem because we can sacrifice our Ranger Captain of Eos anytime we want, right? So there's a lot of moving pieces, but there's a lot of interconnected parts. But so that's how we win here. We have exactly enough mana. Let's go. We have 8 mana, so it's 3 for Heliod, 2 for Ballista, 2 to give it lifelink, that's 7, and then 1 mana for Scavenging Ooze to getting a life to put a counter on the Ballista. So we won game 1. We won. They can't be an infinite life. No, of course not. I don't even need infinite life. They actually they lose to like 100 life. They can only deal 28 damage and then attack for 18 twice, or attack for like they attack for like 21 twice and then they die. Because the only way to shuffle their deck is empty except for 1 Nexus of Fate, I think, right? And 1 Nexus of Fate, and in order to get the Nexus of Fate back into the graveyard and back into their deck, they have to use Phantasmagoria, which requires you to have at least 3 cards in your hand. And they can't discard 3 cards very often. So you don't need to gain very much life for them to be dead. And so there are a lot of people who played this deck and they have Rest in Pieces in their sideboard. They have Rest in Pieces in their sideboard. I learned from testing on stream, I learned that Rest in Peace is actually too slow. It's actually too slow, weirdly enough. They can win on turn 1, and on so Rest in Peace is already too slow with 2 mana. In addition to that, if you are on the draw, they can win on turn 2 very easily. Turn 1 Simian Spirit Guide into Penta Prism, and turn 2 win, right? So Rest in Peace is actually too slow on the draw, and can also not be good enough. You can surgical the Narcomoebas. Or the Vengevines or whatever. You can do whatever you want. So that's why I'm playing Surgical instead of Rest in Peace. In addition to that, there's 2 other things going on here. When you play Rest in Peace as your interactive graveyard card, the enemy deck has natural states and they have disenchants, right? They have like Abrupt Decay. Pardon me. They have Abrupt Decays and disenchants, right? Let's see if I can actually show it to you. Where's their deck at? Is drawing Surgical an auto win? No, it's not. Where's their deck at? When did I reveal it? What's the best surgical target? Whatever you can hit, it doesn't really matter. Here it is. All right. So look at their sideboard. Enemy's sideboard is Goblin Charbelcher, Slaughter Pact, Nature's Claim, Thoughtseize, Path to Negation, Vendetta, right? So if your interactive elements post sideboard are just Rest in Pieces, right? A 2-mana white enchantment. So my interactive things I have post board is Eidolon of Rhetoric, which stops them. So the reason why Eidolon of Rhetoric stops them is players can only play one spell per turn, which means they cannot Salvage Titan and get back Vengevines. So it means when they combo, they deal 12 damage to you and put 2 Narcomoebas in play, and that's it. They put the Sword of Meats into play, right? And so you just have to beat that, which is not that hard. So if your interaction is just Rest in Pieces, then all they have to do is bring in Nature's Claims, right? Because Nature's Claim interacts with everything that you're doing. Whether it's Eidolon of Rhetoric because it's an enchantment, or Rest in Peace because it's also an enchantment. If you board in Surgical Extraction and have Eidolon of Rhetoric, now you have 2 different lock pieces that require completely different solutions. And they don't actually have a lot of slots to actually swap in. They need the cards, like a huge portion of the deck is devoted to only the combo. So they can't really afford to bring in Thoughtseize, Patent Negation, and Nature's Claim, and Goblin Charbelcher. They can't bring all those in. They can only bring, like, basically one or the other, right? So that's another reason why you want to have divergent sideboarding plans. Even if there's a ley line of the Void, they can still just Nature's Claim it. So now, what do you do as a sideboard element? Yeah, and Slaughter Pact is very good. So what do you do as a sideboard element? Do you bring in 2 Nature's Claims, 3 Thoughtseizes? Or do you bring in just the Thoughtseize and Negations and Goblin Charbelchers? Like, do you bring in Vendetta to deal with? Because I also have another thing to understand here is not only do I have Surgical, not only do I have Eidolon of Rhetoric, I also have Scavenging Ooze. I have 2 Scavenging Oozes in the main deck. And I have Eladamri's Calls, and I have Collected Companies, right? I attack from 3 different angles. And none of their sideboard cards actually stop any individual one of them. I also bring in Skyclave Apparitions, which stops Goblin Charbelcher. Right? So I actually am in the driver's seat in this matchup because I can interact with them in every way and from all the angles, and they can't actually stop all of them. So they have to pick and choose their battles. They have to choose which one of them can they actually beat. I'm taxing the sideboard slots and main board slots. That's right. But yeah, and that's what Surgical does for you. And a huge portion of Surgical is it doesn't cost you mana, so you can just tap out every turn, promote your game plan, and you actually put a massive clock on them to do what you need to do. In addition to all that, I can Ranger Captain of Eos them in response to their Balustrade Spy, so they can't Pact and Negation me. Right? I can do all that. It's easy. And I can Spike Feeder Heliod them. They can't beat that either. I do it all. And I have Veil of Summers because I'm thinking they're going to bring in Thoughtseize as a Slaughter Pact and Vendettas. So I can do that too. And Pact of Negation. Veil of Summer also counters everything that they're doing to stop you. It stops the creeping chills when they're going off. So if I have a Veil of Summer that buys me an entire turn, which is enough to win the game for me. If I have Hexproof from black, they can't creeping chill me. Is it each opponent? I don't know. You're right. You might be right. It does stop Thoughtseize, Vendetta, Slaughter Pact, and Pact of Negation. You might be right on each opponent, though. So, on post board, do you keep this hand? On the draw. You're right on the Creeping Chill. It's each opponent. My apologies. I still bring in Veil of Summer, because I'm just better than Giver of Runes and the garbage I took out. But so here we go. Here we go. This is a turn 3 win on the draw. Is this too slow? I have lots of live draws here. Right? I can draw any of the surgicals. I can draw any of the surgicals or the 2 scavenging uses. So I have 3 surgicals, 2 scavenging uses I can draw. But I'm on the draw in Modern against Oops All Spells. And this is a turn 3. This is very, very likely to be a turn 3 win. Be a Spike Feeder plus Collected Company, or I can just draw a Heliod, right? Enemy also mulligan to 6. Now, I have to choose whether to keep to know before they mulligan any further. But this is likely a turn 3 win on the draw. And I have outs to having interaction on turn 2. I've got at least 5 outs. I got 6 outs. I can draw Eidolon of Rhetoric. I have 6 draws to have an interaction on turn 2. And this is probably a win on turn 3. Very, very likely to win on turn 3. I end up keeping it. I can also draw Utopia Sprawl. That is correct. If I draw Utopia Sprawl, I have 4 mana on turn 2, and I could collect a company. You are correct. I could potentially win on turn 2 with this hand still. I have outs. Even if this is a turn 3 win that has potential to win on turn 2. I really don't think that I can mull this. And they mulliganed. Which is a small factor. It's not a huge... If they keep 7, obviously I mulligan this, right? If they snap keep 7, I'm like, I'm out of here. The fact that they mulligan, I think, is the tipping point for this hand. I end up keeping it. Right. What am I hoping to draw? I'm hoping to draw... I'm hoping to draw... Deck lists are open, right? Deck lists are open. They know I have surgicals in my deck. They know I do. Right? So I was also thinking of the next level mind games, right? Where like it's post sideboard, I keep a 7-carder. Odds are pretty good that I've got a surgical, right? I've either got surgical or ooze. Odds are good. So enemy may mulligan to Oblivion looking for a Thoughtseize, right? Or a way to stop that. So that's another reason I think I can keep this on the draw. We brick. Not great. We end up using the Fetch Land turn 1 to make our deck smaller. So we have a higher chance of doing it. But, you know, obviously enemy turn 2s us. So, enemy wins Simeon Spirit Guide and Dependent Prism turn 1 and turn 2 kills us. Which is just like, I'm really not sure. And you get to see their sideboard, and I got to see what they sideboarded. Right, so you can see that they board in Vendettas. They boarded in 2 Vendettas. And what looks like no Thoughtseizes and 2 Charbelchers. So the way they played it, the way they sideboarded, they are actually ice cold. If I had one in my hand, if I had a surgical extraction in my hand. They just went for it. They were rewarded. I mean, retrospectively, we should have mulliganed. I still think it's a keep. I think it's a keep. Look at the cards! Look at them! You like the gender neutral approach? Yeah, that's why I do it. Nobody gets offended. At least I hope not. We mulligan that hand. It was just like, it was like 4 lands. It was like 4 lands, Veil, Heliod, Utopia, right? It was just obviously a mulligan. So this hand is just like, okay, this is a turn 4 win. This is a turn 4 win, right? Not only is this a turn 4 win, it's actually possible that you know, I can still draw surgical, I can still draw ooze. But I'm on the play. Do I keep this? Like, I don't know if I can really do better than this. Because imagine I go to 5. Imagine I go to 5. If I go to 5 cards and I get a surgical, am I a functioning deck with 4 cards? Right? I can't actually win with 4 cards, is the problem. No. I can't actually win with 4 cards, is the problem. I can't put a clock on them. I can't really put a clock on them. It's just like, it's not reasonable. And they do, and another reason for this is that I saw that they have Charbelchers, right? It's entirely reasonable that I can apparition their Charbelcher with this hand. It's entirely reasonable for me to do so. Yeah, that's exactly right, Henry. Even if we go to 5, looking for a surgical, we still die to Belcher. That is correct. Like, at least this hand is an actual turn 4 win that can actually beat a turn 3 Charbelcher. Like, this is, and we still have outs. Like I said, we could still draw an extraction. Or we can still draw an ooze. Like, these are things that can happen. So enemy takes 10 minutes on this. Literally 10 minutes. Not even joking. On this mulligan decision. Not even joking. So we're going to fast forward a bit. We're going to fast forward a bit. Alright. So enemy mulligan to 6 and kept. Alright. Let's go. What do we do? What do we do? What's the play? What's the play? Do we apparition the talisman? Right. Because their combo does require 4 mana. Either it's Balustrade Spy, or it's Undercity Informer plus activate. And they actually do need to activate it on the same turn because they need the Undercity Informer to count as a creature a vast majority of the time. Like the first creature for Vengevines to come back. So what do we do? The Eidolon costs 3 mana. That doesn't work. You can't call for Eidolon because that costs 3 mana. And that's just worse than playing Spike Feeder. Because if we just play Spike Feeder, there's an outside chance we actually win. Right? Because if they end up drawing, like, if they boarded out some Creeping Chills, right? If they boarded out some Creeping Chills and maybe they draw like I can Arbor Elf to block a Vengevine, and if they boarded out any Creeping Chills, I can go to I can remove a Spike Feeder counter and go to 1. Right? I can block, but that, I don't win off that because I have a Spike Feeder with 1 counter. That's not good enough. And that ends up being what it is. Because like I'm thinking like Spike Feeder might actually be good enough to win here. But then I end up doing the math and I'm like, okay, well I'm actually a point short. So we might as well just apparition them. Because I'm thinking, because if they have 4 Vengevines and a Creeping Chill, that's 21, and I block a Vengevine. So I go to 3. So if they have 2 Creeping Chills, I lose, and that's what it is. I basically only beat a 1 Creeping Chill. If they have 2 Creeping Chills, I lose, which is just like that's not enough. But yeah, we drew Utopia Sprawl, so now we go for Eidolon. Because the joke is Utopia Sprawl produces 2 mana when it's on a lands, and Arbor Elf untaps it. So even though I have 4 and Utopia Sprawl costs 1 to play, it actually produces a mana this turn, which is the busted part of this deck. That's why this deck is so much better than Devoted Druid, why it's so much better than Birds of Paradise, why it's so much better than Noble Hierarch. Because of Utopia Sprawl Arbor Elf. It's just like, that's the wombo combo. So now we Eidolon of Rhetoric, and we get there. Why didn't we go for the... We only have 5 mana. It takes 6 mana to play Spike Feeder Heliod. We only have 5. Because the Utopia Sprawl costs 1 to play. So, and I was also thinking, oh crap, now we lose to Charbelcher. I was thinking as I made the play, I'm like, oh, now we lose to Charbelcher. But there's really nothing we can do about that. Like, we either lose to Balustrade Spy, Undercity Informer, or we lose to Charbelcher. We don't even necessarily lose to Charbelcher because we have outs to it. Like, we have a draw step, and we can crack Horizon Canopy. So even if they have a Charbelcher... oh no, we can only play 1 spell per turn. That's why we don't win next turn. Because we can't play Spike Feeder and Heliod. We only have 1 spell to play. But we can draw Skyclave Apparition or Collected Company. We have outs if they have Charbelcher, so that's why we did this. Yeah, right. They have 8 spies they have 8 spies versus 2 Belchers. That is 4 Understanding Informers, 4 Balustrade Spies versus 2 Charbelchers, yeah. And we have outs to the Charbelcher, we have to go for it. And they just go for Spy. Call for Ooze, that's not good enough. Loses to even more cards, because one mana with Ooze is not sufficient, you need 2 mana. So they just go for it. They don't get the Vengevines back, because they can't play 2 spells in 1 turn. So they burn us with the Creeping Chills they exiled, and they have 7 flying power in play. No, I can't play 2 spells in 1 turn. I can't win the next turn. Only if I draw Collective Company into exactly those 2 cards. They attack me for 7. And I play Heliod. And they Path Negation it. And I'm like, ah, crap. Couldn't beat that. Then I'm like, wait. wait. So they could beat Surgical with their Pact of Negation. I thought they had Same in Spirit Guide, but they didn't have the land. Yeah. Yeah, his out was the Rage Concede. They played their outs. It was a good out. Yeah, can't wait. A respectable line that Pact of Negation was. I like it. Yeah. No, I'm smiling in the background because I actually thought I lost. Because I'm like, ah, crap. I thought they had Seaman Spear Guide or something to pay for it. But were I close to conceding? No. Hey, Partister 420, thanks for the positive. How do they not mill? So they have Phantasmagorium in the graveyard and Nexus Fate in their hands. So they just discard Nexus of Fate. I assume. I didn't see whether they have... Oh, Phantasmagorium's their top card, yeah. So. But you're right, the Spike Theater in play actually won me the game too. You're actually right that I actually had the game 1 on board. Unless they had a Creeping Chill in their hand. You're actually right about that. Because they only have 7 damage in the air. And they only have 1 attack step. So I go to 8. They attack me for 7. I go to 1. They can't draw Nexus of Fate again. Because they don't have 3 cards to discard. They have 4 cards in hand. They discard Nexus of Fate and 2 others. They go down 1 card in hand. They draw Nexus of Fate. They can't use Phantasmagorium again. So I actually did win without the Heliod. Which I didn't realize at the time, which is cool that you brought that up. But I actually did already win that game. So they were dead on multiple levels. Their own pact. Oh, it's because they played the Pact of Negation. That's why. No, when they had 5 cards in hand, they can Phantasmagorium twice. So the Pact of Negation actually made them lose twice. Right? Right. They lost the Pact of Negation, but they also lost the Spike Theater that's in play. So and the patch is 3 blue. They lost on multiple levels.